Welcome back to the gospel, the midweek weekend recap. We have a lot to go over, a lot of changes in the landscape of the NFL as well as in the landscape of college football. I'm your host, Zay, and this is the gospel. I got my bros on with me, Young Vander, holla at the people, the Fantasy Nostradamus,
What's going on out there?
and my guy, BK Wins. Holla at the people, BK.
Hey y'all.
Look, let's just go right ahead and hop into it. There were a few games and a few teams that kind of leapt out at me over the weekend. Some to do with what could be, what has been, and really just what we saw over one weekend. Detroit beats the Texans 26-23. I understand where records are right now, but I kind of feel, especially once your boy that came from Cleveland that just went to Detroit didn't play this week. Can't remember his name right now. I know he's a pass rusher.
Is it Smith?
Say again?
Is it Smith?
I believe so. I forget his first name.
I think I know two of them got moved. Was it Zadarius?
Zadarius. Yeah. So their defense looked staunch without him. I can't imagine what it would look like if Hutch wasn't hurt, but that ship is sailed for this year. He'll be back next year, and they'll be. I mean, he's a force multiplier, so they'll be that much better in comparison to where they are now. But based on how they're playing and all the different moving parts they have within their team, their ability to come from behind, their ability to seemingly pull out whatever needs to be pulled out when it needs to be pulled out, and then when all things work together, they dominate teams. But they can win close, they can win at whether it's a big game, home game, away game, high scoring, low scoring, whatever it is, they can bring what needs to be brought to the table to be successful. Are we at the point now where we can have the debate that for this year they may be the best team? Or how far are Detroit and the next couple of teams that you see, whether they be above or below? Vander, why don't you start us out?
I mean, it's an argument if you're gonna call them one of the best team. I still think it goes through San Fran. Even with the record, I still think San Fran's the team to beat NFC. It just got their best player back who hasn't played all season long. So that's gonna be a difference maker. Detroit won this game. But I don't think I've ever seen a game where a team win when their quarterback threw 5 interceptions. That's like unheard of. If I told you one team is going to throw 5 interceptions, they lost. So those are turnovers that the other team didn't capitalize on as far as scoring goes. And you can't do that in this league. So, yeah, they won the game. They found a way to win. Kudos to that kicker coming from the was it the CFL that they call it? AFL or UFL, whatever it was, getting that job and kicking that game-winning kick. But I still think San Fran is the best team. I know the record doesn't maybe show in comparison with Detroit, but that Hutchinson loss is big. I'm cool with Smith coming over. He's a great pass rusher, but Hutchinson, man, that boy motor is stuck. It's stuck on. It never turns off. So he's a big piece to replace on that defense.
So just so I ensure that I understand what you're saying, you feel that San Fran is a better team than Detroit currently?
Yeah, I still think San Francisco is the best team in NFC.
Okay.
I mean, they was able to stay afloat to still be in the runnings, but their best player was injured all year. He's back, and he's a lot fresher than every running back in the league right now, right? He's coming in week 10, and this is McCaffrey. You know what I'm saying? So he's got an advantage there. So in my opinion, I still think they're the best team in that conference, the NFC, the division.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the best team in the league is Kansas City. Of course, to be the champs, you got to beat the champs, and no one's done it. Denver let them off the hook. They blew a double-digit lead. They had that easy field goal to win it. Denver outplayed them in that game, but unfortunately, there's no moral victories. And at the end of the day, it's about results, and they didn't get it done. But the best team in the NFC, not based on record, but injuries have derailed that wagon more than talent or the best team is San Francisco. They're getting healthy at the right time. They're going to win their division. They're already sitting right up there. I know it's a very, very tight division right now, but the fact that they were able to tread water with all their injuries and everything that could go wrong did, and they're still there, it's only going to get better for them. They're the best team in the NFC. Good luck trying to deal with that defense and those weapons in the postseason. And the other thing, look at Goff. He threw 5 picks. Like, I can't remember the last time an NFL quarterback or any quarterback in college or the pros threw 5 picks and they won. And the only reason why they won is give the defense credit. They held Houston in the first half to a few field goals that kept that game from being an absolute blowout. And, they treaded water long enough to come back, but it's what I've been saying. Goff is a good quarterback, but he's not an elite or a superstar quarterback, and that only gets you so far when you're playing against better teams. And there's something wrong with Houston. Like, I know they've had injuries, and Collins just came back, and they, I understand the injury piece, but they just haven't looked right. Like, I know the record was good prior to the last few weeks, but there's just something amiss there.
It's difficult to look like you when you've lost the number 1 receiver in the league for a month or so. And then you lost the number 2 wide receiver on your team too. So right now, all he had to work with was Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. On the defensive side of things, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, Will Anderson wasn't in the game.
Yep.
And when you're talking about something being different, he's a difference maker. So yeah, there was definitely something different between their best 2 wide receivers and their best defensive player. That's a lot to be within a 3-point, So honestly, I there is no moral victory, but to be down those 3 players specifically, we're talking players, all 3 that are force multipliers. They make the parts better than the actual sum total, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I think the fact that they're staying afloat and their division is havable, I'll put it that way, kind of makes things, it gives them a little bit more leeway to get things back to where they need to be.
Well, make no mistake, their division is trash, right? But the other thing about it, I guess to my point, is playoff teams like they were last year, and given the moves they made in the offseason to improve their roster, playoff teams and teams that want to make deep runs in the playoffs find games to win at home when they get 5 gift turnovers. Like, you can't lose those kind of games. It can't happen. Detroit played as awful as they could play and still won. So if you're Houston, you got to shake your head and say, like, if we can't win that game, how are we going to win these games?
The Cardinals crashed the Jets 31-6. I'm not sure what's more surprising at this point. The fast success that the Cardinals are seeming to pick up on, which I didn't foresee them being where they are, just to be honest with you. But then on the opposite side, I don't think that anyone saw the Jets being where they are. At least I didn't see the Jets being where they are right now. And that's saying a lot. They've kind of gotten the pieces that they said that they wanted, so you can't blame it on that. I don't know. The Jets just don't seem fixable at this point in the game, if that makes sense. But what's more surprising to you guys? The Cardinals' success or the lack thereof as far as the Jets are concerned? BK, why don't you start us out?
So for me, really, neither is a surprise. I mean, the Cardinals are basically a 500 team, and based on their talent level, that sounds about right. The Jets, I mean, I think we can already cash in my ticket for under 9.5 team wins for the Jets. They're not going to get there. I mean, that was crazy that anybody thought that they would win 10 games. That's insane. That's like go West and the king of wishful thinking. But, you know, but the Jets are a mess, and I feel like I'm talking about the Cowboys when I talk about the Jets. But the ownership is trash. The front office is trash. The coach is not very good. They've already fired the coach, but they don't have really a permanent one yet. Like, they've made every move that they can make. At the end of the day, it's not working. At what point do you look above and just say, look, I think truthfully, there's enough talent on the field that the win-loss record should be better. But at the end of the day, when you have a culture that's toxic and dysfunctional, there's no saving that. And it's kind of like I'm talking about the Cowboys and talking about the Jets because they're really the same.
Vander.
I'm with BK on this one. I mean, it's not really a surprise on either side. The Cardinals are playing okay, pretty good.
I mean, now they're 6-4 and have the best record in the NFC West. Just so we're on the same page.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to put an asterisk beside that because again, San Fran made it thus far playing without their best player.
Asterisks. People get hurt every day.
Right, but what I'm saying is the reason. But you still got to put more context to it. Like, okay, they're here because of this.
Okay.
I'm not discrediting them. They're doing what they're supposed to do as far as winning games. But they're there because a lot of other things are going on in that division. And let's see.
Well,
There's a new Call of Duty game coming out. It just came out. The new map is about to drop on Thursday. Let's see how Murray plays this weekend. That new map come out on Thursday. So the new map on Call of Duty comes out Thursday.
He already had the pre-order. He already been playing the game.
Maybe so.
He's sponsored by them now.
Let's see how he plays Sunday with that new map come out. You know what I'm saying?
He had it last week and he played fine. I promise you, he had it last week.
But with the New York Jets, I mean, with a Build-A-Bear offensive line, it was bad last year. They try to patch it up this year. You got a 40-year-old quarterback.
I never thought I'd hear Build-A-Bear on our sports network.
You know what I'm saying? They just threw it together, try to make it work. I mean, they have good individual talent. This team does. You have a great wide receiver, great running back. Like, defenders here, winning wings.
Like they got great individual talent.
But as a collective,
how does that happen? Like, how do you have, like, does that mean it's the coach? Like, is it the chef in the kitchen? Like, because if you got the right ingredients, but the product is trash, there's something going on during the cooking process that isn't yielding the results that the individual ingredients should bring to bear.
It starts there.
Go ahead, man.
No, it starts there. It starts from the head guy, the coach, the culture in that locker room. What's going on? For instance, you got a guy like Mike Tomlin, who never have the best ingredients, but somehow he makes a cake out of it. You know what I'm saying? And then you got this guy who have better ingredients, and it's quite not coming out right. So I do think the cook has a lot to do with it as well. Because I mean, we've seen Tomlin not have a losing season ever, and he has had some horrible quarterbacks play over the last somebody years. So
I mean, he had to survive Kenny Pickett, and that's saying something.
the fact that you
and Mason Rudolph,
Pickett
and Rudolph.
Good luck.
I'll take Rudolph over Pickett.
That's an easy choice.
Man. So the Giants lose to Carolina. This was, I'm going to tell you what, I honestly saw this one coming. Not from an NFL standpoint, but everybody's betting against Carolina. So if there was any way. But look, both Carolinas put money in Vegas' pocket this weekend. I can tell you that right now. But the Giants lose to Carolina. Is it time for a head coach change, or offensive coordinator change, or QB change? How many changes can we get done within the next 2 weeks with the Giants, or is this just going to be the band's going to play as the Titanic sinks type of a situation here? What are we doing?
Well, the real winner in that game was me because I didn't watch any of it. So the fact that I avoided watching two awful teams was a blessing. But to answer your question, the Giants are a mess, right? I've been telling you all along that I'm not a Dable fan. Now, it's not all his fault, right? There's, the front office is bad, so that's a problem. They're not drafting the right players. That's a problem. They're not coaching the players schematically correct on the field. That's a problem. And we all know I can't stand Daniel Jones. He's been on that team 2 years longer than he should have been. Why are we holding on to somebody who can't play quarterback? Like, at what point are we going to say, hey, we continue to have a quarterback play mediocre, and we're going to keep running him out here and expecting a different result? That's like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. When the guy shows you he's mediocre for all these years, and again, look, he hasn't been blessed with a great wide receiver. His offensive line hasn't been great. He lost Barkley in the offseason. Please understand it's not all Jones. I put a lot of this on the front office. Again, it's kind of like the Jets. The ownership makes terrible decisions. The coach is bad, and it trickles down to the players. When you have incompetence above you, there's nothing that anyone as a player level that you can do to rise above that. But it still doesn't change that Jones is a mediocre quarterback. I don't think anyone would disagree with any of that.
No, I'm gonna put this solely on the front office, and I mean it GM. That those guys up there. I think Dabble's gonna get a lot of hit for this, even though I don't think it's truly his fault. I think he's the guy. I think he has enough to get it done personally as a coach per se, but he's been set up to fail.
Exactly.
And the reason why you got to play Daniel Jones because you're so far in it with the money, $40 million quarterback. I'm pretty sure maybe after this year, maybe they can get out of from under it. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, what they're waiting on. Again, like BK said, bad offensive line, best player in your team, he's gone. I think, they haven't really drafted the best. I don't know. It's just, I think just the front office is going to get that.
I'll give you a comparison. Dabble, in my opinion, should have done what Ben Johnson did over there in Detroit. Just stay put for a little bit until you get a situation that actually fits versus just you having the desire to be a head coach and that team desiring to hire someone. Because when you signed on to no offensive line and Daniel Jones is your quarterback, you signed on knowing the ingredients that you were going to have to cook with. You weren't surprised when you walked into the kitchen. And maybe there's a air of ego, if you will, that kind of made him, that gave him that I can fix anybody because of how good I am on offense. But overcoming a bad O-line and a bad quarterback, not very many coaches have been able to do that other than Mike Tomlin, because he had both for a long time. But that's one of one. Patriots versus the Bears, 19-3. I'll start this one off. There's two things that are true here, okay? I again don't understand what the Bears saw that us, quote unquote, laymen could see right through. Because I was saying all offseason that Caleb is not Jaden. Vander was saying the same thing. It's just sometimes you can just see the makeup of a person and understand what pressures they're going to be able to circumvent and be the reason why things go right versus just a beneficiary of being set up correctly. This kid can't say that he wasn't set up correctly. He's in a better situation than I can't really think of a QB that was drafted number one overall that was in a better situation. You guys are football almanacs, so if you can come up with something, please, by all means. But it's beyond concerning at this point. They're going the opposite direction, and even the pass catchers are becoming aggravated, and it's like I don't. They got to switch up head coaches. Like this isn't working. The offensive coordinator, I think, was just the first to go, but then it's repeating what the Bears have done. You have a bad coaching staff, screws up a guy. You go get somebody else. That guy is now behind the power curve based on what they didn't learn when they were supposed to learn it, and they're basically starting over in year two, new offense, having to fix a whole bunch of things versus building on things. And then I feel that that's where the Bears are going to be come this offseason. We had hopes of them possibly duking it out at least for the top part of the division. They're dead last right now, and their offense is showing that it isn't quite good enough to even pair with what is a better than average defense. So I did a whole bunch of talking about the Bears. Everyone knows my team is the Patriots. Good game. I mean, you didn't score over 21 points. You probably wouldn't have beat most other teams with this same style of play. But I'm almost hoping that we play ourselves right into the position where we can't mess up the draft. We can't take the wrong pick. We just have to take the best guy on board. And if we're at like 3 or 4 instead of being 1 or 2, it takes away a lot of what you might mess up in the draft. So congratulations to the Patriots. Congratulations to Drake May. Get another W under your belt. And let's keep it moving. But Vander, what you got on these Bears and Patriots?
Well, to answer one of your questions, first one, as far as Caleb, well, I'm gonna go back even further. You said 2 things were certain, right? Yeah, 2 things were certain. 2 things were certain for sure: death and taxes. And nobody want neither one of them. Those both of these.
The Bears messing up a quarterback is the third.
But the thing is this: also with the Bears, I would say Caleb Williams I've never seen a rookie jump into a situation as good as this, as far as the weapons around him. Because usually, if you got the number 1 pick in the draft, you're not that good.
You got a horrible team.
But a testament to this whole back and forth between the two. Offensive coordinator. Jaden Daniels got a better offensive coordinator in Washington, Kingsbury, right? I believe Chicago was a team that they tried to get Kingsbury. I think he turned them down to go to Washington.
Yep.
So that's one thing. And besides the Cleveland Browns, I'm saying Chicago is probably the next franchise as far as not getting it right with the quarterback position in franchise history. They never had a good quarterback, in my opinion. I mean, Cutler was probably if Jay Cutler was probably the best quarterback you ever had in your history. I don't want to hear no McMahon talk, none of that. He was carried by the other guys on the team. But they made a mistake again in the draft. They took Trubisky when they could have took Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
Was that the same? Was it the Mahomes? Was that the same draft, right?
Yeah, that was that draft.
It's just the curse of Chicago, man.
BK, what you got?
So I'm going to attack this from a couple different points of view. I normally save this for a college type thing, But I think there's a significant, and this isn't the bigger problem. I'll get to that. But it's very obvious to me that the Bears have never recovered from that crushing loss in Washington. You know, normally in college, a team will lose one game and they'll lose the next. They'll let the next team beat them because they didn't get over. They got the last game beat them. Basically, the same team beat them twice. It's like, I know they're pros and it's different. It's not college. I understand, but this team has been flat ever since that loss. Like, they've been terrible in the 2 games after that. And to me, that's not a coincidence. Now, yes, the GM did a terrible job picking Caleb Williams. All 3 of us said that Daniels was the better option. It was a no-brainer, and it wasn't even close, which is the sad thing about how bad he messed this up. It's not like it was really even. Anybody who watches football knows it wasn't close. So
And Vander just said something that I didn't realize either. The OC basically said, yeah, I prefer to tie my career. I was in college with them, and I prefer to tie my career to that guy than that guy. So, yeah.
So the GM dropped the ball, which is what the Bears always do, right? The Bears, to Vander's point, are like the Browns. They recycle coaches and quarterbacks, it seems, every 2 to 3 years, which is now, granted, the Browns have made the playoffs a couple times in the last 5 years. So they've at least had some success, and they did do it with 2 different quarterbacks, mostly because their defense and special teams are so good. But, you know, they did make the playoffs. But the Bears have been so bad because they keep recycling coaches and quarterbacks. And Caleb Williams, I hate to say it like this, but it's very obvious. I said it before he got drafted. He doesn't have the it factor, and quite point blank, he's not a winner. He's a diva. He's not a winner. In the NFL, you need a quarterback who's a winner, and he's not. He's a me selfish guy. It's funny because CJ Stroud and Mahomes both tried talking to him and taking him under the wing and trying to give him advice. And he said, no, I got it. Does it look like you've got it? I might be watching a different game than Williams because it doesn't look like he's got it to me.
Well, one thing I'm going to say real quick, and this is the one thing that I'm not sure how it's going to translate from college to the NFL. Caleb Williams, we've seen the first product quarterback of this NIL boom. Last year, you got the nice penthouse, college student. You got the most money on the team. You're probably making about as much money, if not more, than the coach. That kind of creates a sense of
entitlement.
Definitely. So I wanted the transition because think about it. When you wasn't getting paid, you had more hunger. You know what I mean? You're still trying to make it to the league, trying to get that paycheck. Like, you still hungry. I think this NIL can make the hunger, it doesn't burn as much because you're seeing kids staying in school and not going into the league now because they're saying, I can make more money staying in college. When has that ever been a thing? Usually if you can go, you're out of here. There's no question you're trying to leave. But now people are actually thinking, if I stay, I can make more money staying than going. So I'm going to stay here, get another check. Then I think that train of thought has really affected his process going to the next level. So I think we've seen the product of what NIL can do to a player going to the next level.
Agree.
If that makes sense, if y'all kind of see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I do see where you're coming from.
I do.
For most, it's doing everything I can do to grind it out to get to, not, matter of fact, let me add a layer to that. It wasn't getting to the NFL and getting that first contract. It's actually about the second contract, because the first contract is under the rookie wage scale or whatever the case is. The second contract is the one where you can break the bank. But when you've already broken the bank, you're now ahead of about a 5-year process that was supposed to happen, that you were supposed to try to, like, college athletes in general are taking a pay cut to go pro now. Who would have thought that would be like? We were talking about just let them accept favors, just let them get the little like why are you kicking people out because they got a ring and a tattoo? Like calm down a little bit. BK, you know what that still hurts.
Yeah, I felt that one.
But now it's let me make the business decision to not go pro because my first 2 years in the NFL won't equal out to what I can make from NIL in my senior year in college. That's a whole different layer to things now. But yeah, good point, Vander. Moving on over to college. Down goes Georgia again. Ole Miss 28, Georgia 10. They're now number 12 in the college football rankings. What is going on in Georgia?
Nothing. It's like I've been trying to tell you for weeks on weeks. SEC. Like this is what happens. This is Fight Club. And the only rule Fight Club is you don't talk about. Like, this is Fight Club. You know what I'm saying? You can get beat up. You can be at the office at your 9 to 5 with a black eye, and everybody wonder what happened. Last night you was at Fight Club. That's what the SEC is. The very bottom, we didn't seen it. The very lowest tier team you could think of can go smack one of the top guys. Like Alabama got smacked by Vandy. Then they can go get smacked by South Carolina, who was unranked and then they're ranked. And then Georgia turn around. It's like any given Saturday in this conference, for the most part, you can get your behind kicked. And convincingly, too, with that score, that's more of a convincing win that you didn't, because even when Georgia beat Alabama, Georgia beat Alabama, right? No, they lost Alabama. So yeah, because of the catch by the freshman. When they lost to Alabama, people were still screaming. And Zay, I remember you saying also, Georgia's the best team in college football. That was the talk after that game. They lost, and people still thought they was the best team. Now look at
Texas was the best.
Well, a lot of people still thought Georgia was the best team after the Alabama loss, is what I'm saying.
But I mean, but what you're saying about the SEC, I can easily say about the Big Ten.
No.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't. You're not.
The team in Indy is one of the teams that's at the bottom. The Illini are one of the teams at the bottom.
How many? I can stump that argument very fast. Look at the APP poll. Count the teams, man.
No. You're missing what I'm saying.
No, I'm not.
What you were saying about the SEC, where the lower ranked teams on any given Saturday can beat the higher ranked teams. That's the same thing that you have going on right now in the Big Ten. A lot of those lower ranked teams are more than capable of beating some of the higher ranked teams.
No, it's not even close to what you're talking about. No. A team like Kentucky will jump in the Big Ten, probably kick some butt over there. A team like teams like that will go with South Carolina, go over there and kick a lot of butt over there. It's not quite the same.
We've seen teams move to the SEC like Texas, and they were on top for a minute there. I mean, there have been moves in various conferences where we thought, well, if this happens, then that happens. That's
but you know what you just said? You're talking about the best in their conference going there. We're not talking about we're gonna just throw the North Carolina Tar Heels in the SEC. You took in the best out of one conference, like a Texas, and put them in there.
Texas wasn't the best, and they got if I'm not mistaken.
Texas has always been one of the better teams in that conference. They had some down years over the years, but Texas always been.
Texas A&M is essentially I would compare them to an Indiana or Michigan State in the Big Ten.
How would you do that? What are you talking about?
Texas A&M wasn't creme de la creme in the Big 12.
So I disagree with.
What are you talking about?
So here's the thing, right? So I'm going to go back. The SEC's won 13 of the last 18 national titles. These volumes.
Wait.
But I know
So
you're talking this year.
that's not the point that I'm countering. I'm talking about the lower teams being able to beat the higher team.
And I don't agree with that either, because think about it. The lower teams in the Big Ten right now are Northwestern and Purdue, who are straight up trash. They would literally go winless in the SEC, and much like they're going winless in the Big Ten. But if you look at it, right, look at the teams in the SEC. If I were to stack the conferences and say Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, I would probably put Indiana fourth. Not based on record, because I understand the win-loss record, but in terms of talent and how they actually play on the field, Indiana's probably the fourth best team in the Big Ten behind the three that I listed. However, if you put Indiana in the SEC, they wouldn't make a bowl. And that's the facts. And it's not because they won't get there. It's because, let's put it this way. Michigan was the best team by far talent-wise they played all year. And they pulled that game out of their ass. And so if you can barely beat a marginal team that has the same amount of talent as you, that game was glaring to where Indiana was. It told me exactly what I thought about Indiana. It's a great story. They've won a lot of games. I'm really excited to see them be more than just a basketball school for a year at least. And they're going in the right direction because that coach can coach for sure. But the talent's not there. You watch them on the field. The eyes don't lie. This team is, it's like watching Army. It's a great story, but have them play a better schedule, and they're a 500 team. That's not knocking them. It's just where their talent is, and that's okay.
I still don't think that the argument isn't there that on any given Saturday, teams that you're speaking to, like, say, for instance, the South Carolina of Vanderbilt, right? We tend to give credit to the upper echelon SEC teams when they lose to the quote-unquote lower echelon SEC teams. Like that's what I mean by, like, when we started the season, I said for the SEC, whether they win or lose, it's a win, because if they win, they won because they were supposed to. But if they lose, they lost because the team that they went up against is another SEC team. That tends to be the frame in which people put a win or loss in the SEC. And so all I'm saying is the teams that you're looking at, like your Illinois, your Indies, your Washington, even there are a few teams out there. They're on the same line as your Vanderbilts and South Carolina. Like, I've watched South Carolina forever. That you're not about to tell me that they're just like, what they have going on now is different. What Vandy has going on this year is a little bit different. I get that.
What Indiana has going on this year is different.
Yeah. No, I agree. But which is why I'm feeling as if they're close to the same type of a measurement.
But here's the difference, right? Real quick, Vander, my bad. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But real quick, right? There's only one team that's not respectable in the SEC, and that's Mississippi State. They're garbage. Even Florida's outperformed where they're at, and they're having to play with three quarterbacks. If you look at the Big Ten, Northwestern's terrible. Purdue's terrible. Rutgers isn't very good. Maryland is awful. Like, and there's more teams there. There's 5 teams probably in the Big Ten that are really, really bad. You can't say that in the SEC. And they have 16 teams in the conference, and there's only one team that's at all awful, and Mississippi State is awful.
Hey, look at we just seen Georgia lose to Ole Miss, right? Like I told you, this same Ole Miss team lost to Kentucky, who's 3-6. That's what I'm trying to tell you. This is the bottom. They're next to last. BK bought up Mississippi State. They're last, and next to last is Kentucky. That next to last Kentucky team beat Ole Miss. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Any given Saturday, one of them lower level teams in the SEC can clip you.
And they should have beat Georgia.
It's just that tight. It's just that tight.
One thing that I love to see this offseason is how they put together the quote unquote, if you will, intramural bowls, where you get to see some of the teams that we're speaking to in various conferences go up against each other, the ones that didn't happen to make the playoffs. And then even when they do make the playoffs, those matchups will be interesting as well. Indy beats Michigan 20-15. We just talked about that. Notre Dame versus Florida State 52-3. Like, I don't know how often a college coach gets fired during the season, or the fact that there's only a couple of games left. You let him, walk out with his lunch pail and know his date of death versus wondering about it. But is there anything that what is his name? Norvell? Is there anything he can do to keep his job at this point? And a lot of teams lose a lot of players. I don't think they lost any more than let's say like a Michigan or a Washington or somebody like that, but they just went completely left. Like is this the coach? Is this the play? Like how does this happen?
Look at, man, if Norvell asked Jesus to save his job, he'll even be like, come on, man. I know I turned water into wine, but you're asking for a lot. You know what I'm saying? Even Jesus would say he asking for a lot to keep that job. So that's all I got to say about that, man. He's out of there. There's no question.
So I'll be curious to see what the result is. If it was up to me, he would be fired. The one thing I wonder about is coming into the year, he had won 19 in a row. He did complete an undefeated season last year. And the truth of the matter is, and we also know that the buyout is a pretty good amount. So will Florida State pony up for that? And they can do it. The question is, will they do it? And then the other part is, the truth is, well, he did rely too much, live and die by the portal. He died by the portal. But the truth is, if they had Cam Ward instead of DJU, this team would be right back in the playoffs because the talent around it's good enough to be there. He just effed up the quarterback and it killed him. That move derailed the thing. So that one move has screwed up that team. They're the best team in the ACC if Cam Ward plays quarterback there.
So do you try to get a different quarterback, or do you say, well, the same coach that had us undefeated one year with, the talent that we had there, we can just replace the talent and look forward to that same type of a year? Like if it is attributed to what you're saying it is, shouldn't that possibly get the coach a mulligan? Because when he had the right players, it worked. Should he get another year to try to get the right talent on there? Or what do you hope with the next coach that we don't know who it's going to be? For
me, I'm going to defer to Vander on this, but I'll just make this point.
I mean,
the standard is the standard at Florida State. Right. And you can't have Florida State is a top 10 job. They're at the worst, they're a top 10 job. Yep. It's the best job to have in the ACC by a mile. If you have a season like this, that can't happen ever.
And like BK said, I mean, what if you drop the ball again as far as choosing the right guy? Because this was a hand-picked guy. Right. So that was on you. That was on the coach. They lost Jordan Travis with the injury last year, which I thought they would have won if he was healthy. They come out, got the guy they wanted. So if he does get a mulligan, I'm pretty sure he's gonna go back shopping in the NIL supermarket again this year, because of what he currently have on the staff on the roster is not going to be a starter next year. He's not going to bring in he's not going to get a guy from high school right now and make him the starter. He's going to go shopping at the NIL supermarket and try to find a quarterback. And who's to say?
The mistake that Norvell made, in my opinion, is the coaches who are really, really successful recruit really well consistently. They cycle top 15, top 10 classes over and over again, and then they plug gaps using the portal. Where Norvell's erred is he's said, I'm okay with the top 25 class, and I'm just going to try to just purge the portal. And you can't do that. You can't build your whole roster on the portal. He had 13 starters from what should have been a national title team last year. You can't do that year after year and win. You're not going to hit all that time. And he screwed up the most important thing, which is a quarterback. And if you think it doesn't matter, just ask Dabo what not having a generational quarterback does to you.
Absolutely.
Let's go through these college playoff rankings right quick. And we'll go through 15. Tell me whether the 3 that are knocking on the door should be in, and if so, who should be out. We got Oregon at number 1, Ohio State at number 2, Texas at number 3, Penn State number 4, Indy number 5, BYU number 6, 7 Tennessee, 8 Notre Dame, number 9 is Miami, number 10 Alabama, 11 Ole Miss, number 12 last team in is Georgia. The 3 teams knocking on the door: Boise State, SMU, Texas A&M. Let's go back just a few more because there are a few other teams that are kind of interesting here. You got K-State at 16, Colorado at 17, Washington State at 18. We'll round it out at 20. Louisville 19, Clemson number 20. What kind of shakeups can we look forward to? Do you feel that the top 12 as they are, let's say everyone else, this can't happen because some of these teams are going to go against each other. But if everything stays pat, are there any teams that you feel are in that shouldn't be, or teams that are out that you feel should be that are knocking on the door?
Well, definitely there's going to be an SEC championship game.
Right.
The way it currently is looking could be Tennessee versus Texas is in the West, right?
They're all one conference.
So it's the top 2. Damn. Tennessee versus Texas. That's an ugly game. BYU, don't they still have to play Colorado? Because they have a big. They would play
them in the Big 12 title game.
They have a Big 12 title game, so they will probably, if they lose, they probably would fall all the way out. But I mean, it's the top 12, right?
Yep. And you got one more week of regular season, and then you got the.
I don't want to see Boise State in it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I know they're right there at the edge of the. I don't want to see Boise State. I think SMU is interesting. Maybe I'm Pony. Maybe I'm still thinking about the Pony Express, but that's an interesting team. I would like to see them squeeze in. To be honest with you, Miami's sitting at 12. They don't deserve it. I just think
Miami at 9.
Oh, they at 9? Damn,
yeah. Miami's at 9.
There's an ACC championship game as well, right?
Yes.
Yep. So that's why I say a lot of these are going to come down to the championship games because there may be teams right now that aren't ranked in the top 12. But they'll play in a championship game, and if they win that championship game, they can't be denied a spot in the playoff. So some of these things are going to work them. But what we're going to right now in the SEC, what it's looking like is either Georgia or Alabama, one or the other is going to end up missing the first playoff. Because Tennessee. Well, we got Texas and Tennessee, both currently ranked higher than the two of them. Only two SEC teams can get into the championship. So however that ends up working out, somebody's going to be on the outside looking in without a way to get back in.
Is there a Big Ten championship game?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Oregon will have to repeat and play Ohio State?
Yes.
That's what it's looking like right now.
See, this thing, I'm so old school. I'm thinking about Pac-12, Pac-10. Like with Oregon, it's strange seeing Oregon in the Big Ten. That's strange as hell, especially them being a West Coast team. That don't make sense.
So the team that I would like to see in the field that's not right now, and I've been saying this for 6 weeks, and I'm going to say it again. SMU is going to win the ACC.
Yeah, I like to see them in there.
They're the best team. You watch that roster. Miami's going to God help the Canes if they get SMU in that title game. The Mustangs are going to run all over. Can you imagine SMU's offense? Think about it. Cal scored 38. Cal can't score a point. They scored 7 against the Noles. Okay? Then you watched Duke score 7,000 points. And then you watched Louisville score 45 against Miami. Can you imagine what SMU would do? Wow. Good night.
It'd be a shootout.
So I say that to say that, you look at some of these teams. This is the first year that I can remember where you don't have a definitive favorite or a powerhouse team. It's wide open. It could be Texas. It could be Georgia. It could be Bama. It could be Ohio State. It could be Oregon. There are so many teams, and I'm sure I missed some along the way, but it's truly wide open where literally you could pick 8 teams, and any one of those 8 teams could probably do it, which should make for a fascinating playoff.
Absolutely. I can't wait for it. And here's the other thing, right? Vander was talking about Notre Dame being in the top 10. They're number 8. He was talking about that last week. So they're already in the top 10. What I'm looking at from here is there are going to be a few teams that have an extra game on top of what they have. And if some of the teams that play each other that are already ranked higher than they are, it can end up making a situation to where they move back just because there was no win to propel them forward, if that makes sense. So I think the committee has they're going to have a job to do here. Like it's not going to be like if you have me picking between Notre Dame and Alabama, that's not a difficult decision for me. Even if Alabama, just like Notre Dame, didn't get to a championship game because let's say as it stands, Texas and Tennessee end up going against each other.
Well, the difference. The reason why that's not going to happen is they have 1 loss. Bama has 2. Bama has no more ranked opponents on their schedule. And I know it's not that good of a team, but Army is ranked. They play Army. They have a high ranking. That's a win they can get that's going to look good on their resume. Not saying Army is a team that looks good, you beat them, but they're currently ranked like 16. Alabama has no more ranked opponents on there. So even though they have an extra game, they're all unranked.
That's interesting because they're one of the last teams that are undefeated, but in the playoff rankings, they're not in the top 20. They're not in the top 22. That's all that I was able to get on this list. But it's interesting that you have teams that have taken a loss or multiple losses that are in front of an undefeated team, to your point. Go ahead, BK. Go ahead and round this out.
Yeah, I just think for me, right, if I compare Notre Dame and Bama specifically, right, Bama has 2 losses versus 1. One team plays in the best conference in college football. The other plays in no conference. And Notre Dame's schedule's been Charmin soft, right? We're literally sitting here saying that their best wins are going to be against Navy, who's probably going to have 3 losses because they still got to play Army, and Army's a better team. Now, that's a rivalry game, so it doesn't mean, you throw out the records, Navy can beat them for sure. But on paper, it's a game that Army's the better team. And Army's played nobody. And mind you, that while the Notre Dame winning streak has been great, did we forget that Northern Illinois beat them? Like, at home. They were like a 30-point favorite and lost. Do you know how many losses Northern Illinois has this year? I watched them in the MAC. I've gone to Akron. That's my alma mater. Northern Illinois has been mediocre this year. A mediocre team beat Notre Dame. And look, the other part of it is, like we always say, this will all sort itself out. It is wide open. Teams will beat up on each other. But what's interesting to me is I feel like we're going to have a 3-loss team make the playoff, because especially in the SEC, all these teams are beating up on one another. Georgia has 2 losses. Bama has 2 losses. I know LSU's out of the playoffs now, but they have 3 losses. And my question for you guys as we wrap things up is this. When you look at the Lincoln Riley hiring at Southern Cal, and you look at the Brian Kelly hiring at LSU, and you look at the Brett Venables hiring at Oklahoma, is it fair to question whether these were big misses? I understand what they did prior to that, but based on what we're seeing, like, to me personally, I'll just say, and then I'll get out of the way, they've underperformed big time at those schools.
Well, they got hired on the nostalgia. You said it, what they did in other places they were at. When these guys were hired, these are huge names. These are the hottest names available. So I think they did what they supposed to do as far as the university getting the big ticket seller, the big name, the big resume coach in. But this NIL has made things so difficult for those teams you used to see doing so well. And those coaches' prestige don't mean anything anymore. It's all about this right here. If you ain't got this, that's why Saban seen it. He's seen it, and he's like, I got the kitchen. It was getting too hot. I can't come in your living room and say, I'm Nick Saban. You come to Tuscaloosa. You got 800,000? Like, that's what these kids want now. I want 800,000. I want 500,000. I have a friend of mine I went to high school with. His son is the best player in South Carolina right now. That's all I'm gonna say. I mean, you seen what's the coach from Georgia?
Kirby Smart.
Kirby Smart came in a helicopter to the high school to see the kid. That looks good. Yeah, that's a lot of flash. That used to be a thing that was like, Kirby Smart is here. He want to see me. You got this. You don't got this. It doesn't mean anything. And I think we're seeing a effect of that now with a big name coach. Doesn't really mean much. And real quick on the Notre Dame thing, they did beat Texas A&M this year as well. So that's another quality win they do have on their. It's the first game of the season, but it's a quality win they do have on their resume. So
I definitely say that NIL has changed the game as well. That's one of the first things that came to mind. It's like saying because you did well on one cooking show, when the rules, the rhyme and reason completely change, when the level of pressure in said show completely changes. You go from a backyard, do-it-yourself, take pictures over the weekend in your own environment to being in Hell's Kitchen. Depending on how you handle the change, it's going to tamper with or improve the product. And for these coaches, they how would I say, although things are new to everyone, NIL hit everyone at the same time, but to coaches that leaned on other tools that are now obsolete, it hits them a little bit more. So yes, nostalgia, yes, thinking I was going to be able to take this same plan and playbook and make it work over here but now there's a completely different page in the book that I have to learn on the fly. And maybe I was great at doing what I used to do. That don't mean I'm great when you add a new dimension to my job. I still can do all the other things, but if me negatively doing the new thing affects how what my best product is going to be, then it can make the whole house tumble down, you know. So yeah, I mean, NIL is huge here. Not that there are other areas of opportunity as well, just so we're on the same page, but NIL, I believe, is huge. And not only that, but in many cases, you have to ask yourself truly, yes, I can take a chance on someone else and hope that I, you know, get it right. And then I have a guy that isn't a quote unquote retread, or, you know, somebody that I was the visionary to, I see something in you type of situation. But more often than not, that ends up being an even worse move than hiring someone that you at least know is capable of doing the job until the job changed. So I'm going to give them, if I were in that position, give them a chance to now catch up to the new job to see if the new job is too much for them to handle. And some of those coaches where it is too much to handle, they're going to make that business decision on their own and decide to either do something different or hang it up and be okay with the multi-millions they have waiting on them, and, you know, go riding off into the sunset with the families, whatever the case may be. Anything either one of you gentlemen want to say to wrap us up before we sign off?
Real quick, to kind of piggyback on this same conversation, you can look at some of the schools and see the ones that was able to stay afloat. Oregon is the perfect example. They got Phil Knight. They don't never have to worry about this thing. You know what I'm saying? They got Nike. That means they got plenty of money.
Phil Knight literally said, "I will buy a championship. I want Oregon to have a ring before I die." And I believe in 86, if I'm not mistaken. He said, just let me know how much the check needs to be, and I'll write the check. That's what Oregon is right now.
Not only you got 300 different uniforms over here, this is Nike. So I can always promise a kid, you want free Nike clothes? You forever? You want this? These are things that kids like. Like, I can get all the Nike sneakers I want.
Not only that,
yeah.
You got first dibs on signing with Nike because you already got a relationship with Nike.
So you can get all the sneakers. You could be on campus, all the fresh Nikes you want. I got a warehouse, man. You go, man, you can pick whatever you want, man. Anytime. We got all these, like, it shows. A guy like Deion Sanders, he has moxie. So that was able to get a 1-win Colorado team to a 4-win team to now a 7-win bowl eligible team. I mean, NIL, maybe some little marijuana money up there in Denver.
Accolade, most likely going to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, and look how quick
very bottom of the barrel to a championship game.
So you can turn your team around quick through the NIL. Now this is not the norm, but what Deion is doing is normal. But he's able to do it. I mean, again, I think you just gotta. If you don't have alumni, this is my last word. If you don't have an alumni that's willing to pour $20 million a year into this bucket, we'll see you later. But you got to have at least 20 million put to the side and able to compete in today's game. If you don't got that, SMU is showing you that. Where in the hell do they come from? BK, where the hell did SMU come from?
Well, what's so unprecedented about it is the fact that they left a lesser conference and came to the ACC and are already having immediate success. That's unheard of for a team to do that, and they have been incredible. But yeah, it's NIL. That's what it is. Well, it's good coaching with a really good quarterback and a lot of NIL.
And that pretty much wraps it up for the evening. Make sure you guys check us out on YouTube at The Gospel STP. Again, that's on YouTube at The Gospel STP. If you haven't joined the Facebook group, that is the Gospel Sports Truth Facebook group. And make sure you tell a friend about us. Follow, join, subscribe, whatever it is you need to do to help us out and make sure that you get access to the latest shows. You'll get a notification letting you know that we're ready to rock for this evening. That pretty much wraps it up. And remember, you guys, always tell the truth
and nothing but the truth.